We're going to call the meeting to order. Welcome everyone to the Brunswick County Board of Education meeting for February 2021. I'm going to ask everybody to stand. Ms. Moffitt will give an invocation and Mr. Benton will lead us in the pledge.
Father, again, we are grateful to be here tonight, Lord, and we just thank you for your blessings upon us and upon our school system. I again ask that you provide a hedge of protection around our teachers and our students. Lord, I ask that you give the teachers a fresh wind and a fresh fire, Lord, and sustain them as they navigate COVID and remote learning and face-to-face. Lord, just protect them, give them endurance, and give them strength. And I just ask that for our students as well. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. And to the flag over here. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Tonight we're going to go into closed session early, so I need a...
If we could consolidate both of the closed sessions in lieu of doing two separate ones.
Okay. Everybody agree with that? Okay, we'll just combine them, and if I can have a motion to go to closed session. Mr. Berger has made a motion to go to closed session. It was seconded by Mr. Robinson. All in favor, say aye. 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 So moved. Call the meeting back to order. Next on our agenda tonight is presentations, and thank you for coming again, Mr. Stanley. Mr. Stanley is going to give us an update on COVID.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, good evening. Thank you for inviting me back. So cases since we met last time obviously have increased. We did see a lot of the surge that we had anticipated for the Thanksgiving and on through the Christmas break. Right now, we are standing at 6,669 cases as reported today in Brunswick County, and unfortunately reporting 102 deaths since the beginning of the pandemic. Statewide, we're looking at 764,228 cases with 9,409 deaths being reported. So talk about, like I did last time, regionally a little bit. New Hanover County is reporting 3,784 cases. Columbus County, 5,187 cases. Horry County, to our south, 29,166 cases. Pender, a little bit smaller in size than us, has 4,124 cases. And so when we look at, again, I gave y'all metrics about what our cases per 10,000 were. And so of those regional counties that I just mentioned, we still are the lowest number at 463 cases per 10,000. As compared, and then I'll throw the state average in there, at 726 cases per 10,000, just to give you an idea of what the statewide average is. So when we dig down into those numbers a little bit, just to give you some statistics on male, female, when we're looking at North Carolina, about 47% of those are male, about 53% are female of total cases. When we go to deaths, of those who actually succumbed to COVID, that reverses. So 52% of those were male and 48% as female as reported by the state. Looking at that same statistic for Brunswick County, that's 46% male, 54% female as far as those that are picking up the virus and getting the virus in the county. And again, that flip-flops when we look at deaths. 56% of the deaths have been male, 44% have been female. When we look at the age group that is still getting the virus or picking up the virus the most, it's the 25 to 49-year-olds, the working folks that are out and about in the communities, the people that are more active. They're about 39% statewide. Our Brunswick County statistics is 31%, but still our biggest age group, age band group for Brunswick County is the 25 to 49-year-olds. When we look at our number of deaths, 83% for North Carolina is the 65-year-olds. So 65 plus make up 83% of the deaths as being counted. And for Brunswick County, it's 87% of the 65-year-olds. I also point out that when you go a step further and say age 75 and up, that's roughly 60% of the deaths is 75 and up. So obviously the higher in age, the more issues that we're seeing succumbing to the disease. Again, half the deaths are in congregate care that are being reported, and that's not only here locally but statewide. So the other statistic that we look on regarding cases to kind of get a feel for where this is going is our percent positives. And over the last, I would say, couple of weeks, we have seen a positive or a better trend downward in our percent positive statewide and also at the county level. So if we go back, say a couple of weeks ago, we were almost at 15% statewide for those few weeks right in there. And so what that means is for, say, every 100 tests that are done, 15 of those are positive. And for where we're at today is at 9.7% as reported by the state. And so you might remember we talked a little bit last time that if we could get that number around 5%, that's where we think the magic number is as far as the pandemic, maybe stabilizing a little bit. So we still got some room to go, but we feel like headed in a better direction, getting away from some of the gathering and the social events that occurred over the holidays. And so our Brunswick County statistic for that is 10.5%. And we had also, a couple of weeks ago, had been at the 13-14% range, and we've moved down. So a lot in the news lately about vaccines. So I did want to talk a little bit about that. A lot of questions about what groups are we in, where are we going next. And there's been a lot of just about every day there's a new rendition of some of the groupings and how that works. But where we're at now is in Group 1 and Group 2. So Group 1, if you think about it this way, are healthcare workers or our workers that have a lot of occasion to touch COVID patients or work in that healthcare industry. And then the second group is our older adults, which started at 75 and older, but now has been lowered to 65 and older. And so that's Group 2. And those are the groups that we're in now. The vaccine supply, as I'm sure y'all have heard, is very limited. It's very limited coming into the state, and it's very limited being distributed to Brunswick County. I can tell you that we have formed a partnership, a wonderful collaboration with our hospitals, both hospitals here in the county and the health department, to be able to combine our doses. Wonderful partner with Brunswick Community College out there at the event center at the Odell Williamson Auditorium. We're able to set up a mass clinic where folks with the vaccine that we have can essentially go through a pre-registration process, and they stay in their vehicle the whole time from pre-registration to when they actually get their shot. Nobody has to get out of the car. After they get their shot, we monitor them for 15 minutes or 30 minutes if they are high risk, and then they're able to drive on. We have been able to do thousands of individuals in that line, and we're getting a lot of good praise for it. We've got the capacity to do more. We just need the vaccine. We need the doses. Our leadership at the county, of course, y'all may have seen, has sent letters to the governor's office and Secretary Cohen asking for more doses. As you all know, we do have a high senior population here in the county. We almost have 46,000 individuals that were estimated that are age 65 and older. And when you're only receiving, cumulatively so far, about 10,000 doses when we combine all of our efforts at both hospitals and the health department. And then also we talked about the group 1, the healthcare workers. You can see we're woefully don't have enough supply in order to meet the demand. So we are hoping that that as time moves on, as additional vaccines, now we have 2, the Moderna vaccine and the Pfizer vaccine, that we're utilizing. We're hoping as additional vaccine production happens for those, as well as additional vaccines become approved, that this process of being able to vaccinate folks will move a little quicker. I was listening to Secretary Cohen today about moving to the group 3, which we're at the school board and school staff are considered essential workers. They would be in that group 3. And based on the messaging that I heard from that today, she had indicated that statewide they were at least several weeks out from moving into the next phase. The other thing I'd like to point out about the vaccine is you obviously have people that live in other counties or go other places. Here's the thing about the vaccine. When it is your turn and you can find the vaccine, you don't have to be in any particular jurisdiction in order to receive the vaccine. And that's something important because with the different healthcare systems that you might be involved in, they might call you and say, we have a vaccine for you, and they want you to go to New Hanover County, or they want you to go to South Carolina, or wherever you do business for your health care. You might get those calls, and that's fine. You don't have to get your vaccine necessarily in the county that you live in. In fact, you may have seen where they're opening and have opened some mega sites for people in the state to be able to go and get their vaccine, and that's kind of a regional thing where people can go and get their vaccine. The only thing is, if you get your first dose there, because the 2 vaccines that we have now, you have to get a second dose for it to be to get your maximum efficacy at 94, 95%. You probably need to be prepared to get your second dose there as well, because when they ship us the first doses, they hold back the second doses and ship them to the provider that gave the first dose just before it needs to be given, which is either 3 weeks for the Pfizer or 4 weeks for the Moderna vaccine. So I know I threw a lot at you, and I'll be glad to take any questions that y'all may have.
Can you just give us a breakdown of Union and Jessie May, kind of what happened there? I know we've been getting a lot of public inquiry. It hit the news, especially after Town Creek, and I know it was, as far as my understanding is, it's not related to anything we're doing in the schools. Right. We were not the source of this, but we were collateral damage because of siblings. So I just kind of wanted to get
right
on the, you to be able to.
Yeah, for sure. So events at any school that you'll have, you have people that will turn positive at the school. That doesn't necessarily mean that they were exposed to something in the school, because we all have lives and do other things outside of the school as well. And so, if you're talking about these particular elementary schools, My understanding is there was another site, off-site, to where some of the same participants in the school congregated and were were essentially able to be that way. And so it's kind of by association that the schools were involved in that particular scenario.
You're not seeing any clusters at our schools that were unrelated to the outside event, right? In the numbers, in other words, we're not seeing any transmission still in our buildings.
I will say, even since the beginning of the pandemic, we largely haven't seen, most of the cases that are reported inside the school are something that was really occurred outside, and it was outside, and that's true for whether we're talking about schools or we're talking about workplaces or large employers, small employers. A lot of with folks that are doing the 3 W's and practicing the social distancing and the toolkit, the 30-page toolkit that y'all have been following, those go and do a great deal to keep people safe. And most of the time, when we see those exposures, like the surge that we've seen over the holidays, it's where people have opportunity to congregate outside of those organized locations without masks, people of different households, mixing together. And that's typically where we're seeing the challenges. We don't really see as many challenges from places that are organized where people are following the protective measures. I would say that's wholesale, whether we're talking about school or we're talking about workplaces or religious institutions.
Mr. Stanley, the rules and the guidelines for agencies outside the schoolhouse, say daycare, for example, are slightly different or modified from the rules that we have to follow in the public school toolkit, correct?
Yes. There are recommendations that are very similar, but they don't have the same 30-page document or toolkit that you all have.
There's
correct?
no way for us to know that if there is a program that is associated with the school, not that is sanctioned or governed by the school, but a outside private company running some sort of program for school-age children, there is no way for you, me, this board, or anybody else to police what they do inside their facility, which could contribute to the higher number of cases of quarantines in our school population because they may attend these other facilities.
That is correct. And we do go as a health department. We can go and we provide the education and the recommendation and have the guidelines that folks follow. And we do that for all types of businesses, child care centers or whatever it may be. And usually when we go in there and we try to educate folks about the process and the procedures, we are able to get a lot of good cooperation and coordination with folks, working with us along those lines. But as we know, even with in those type facilities, even with the protective measures they have in place, there are outside events that happen outside of that, and so really it gets back to you can have the processes as much as you can in place. It's the breakdown occurs where people aren't doing these things, whether it is in a school or in another facility outside of school or at its home. Wherever the breakdown occurs is where you're going to get the exposure. But where the importance is of everybody doing their part, it puts layers and layers of protection on. And so the schools doing their part, there's a layer of protection. The outside agency that you're referring to, they put a layer on. It adds a layer of protection. And then if we can do our part at home, then hopefully it keeps us from having as many issues. And so that's why, we do go back when we talk with folks and we see clusters or something like that happens. We do go to that organization and kind of go through the procedures and processes and make sure they understand how important these layers are to keep people safe.
Have you been in any of our schools since the pandemic started?
You mean physically?
Are you familiar with any of the precautions or systems we put in place?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Would you say that we have taken appropriate precautions to keep schools safe and make schools safe?
Absolutely. It is, just reviewing some of those procedures, like we do every so often. There are additional workforce that's been put on to do procedures at all these schools every day. There's daily disinfection that goes on in the classrooms. There's daily disinfection procedures in big open areas and fogging that occurs. And then in addition to that, when you do have an issue or there's even specialized folks that come in and do an even higher level of cleaning when something's identified as where someone's been positive. And so, yeah, I mean, I would put the disinfection procedures for this school system up against any, and it's probably borderline in what hospitals do.
So in your line of work in public health, you would agree that school is probably safer than the grocery store?
As
As
far
far
as
as our procedures of disinfecting, our plexiglass, our providing a face shield, all the things that you just outlined, you would say we go above and beyond what the grocery store would do.
Yes, sir. I would say so.
I'd like to comment here at this point. In the last few school days, I have been to all 20 schools, 15 with Dr. Oates and the 5 high schools with Mr. Cheers. In those 20 schools, I didn't see one student that didn't have their mask on and have it on properly. I did not see a single adult anywhere, administrators, teachers, teacher assistants, custodians, no one, who weren't following all the regulations. Their mask was on. In some cases, some of the teachers had plastic shields on. In some classrooms, they had plexiglass on the tables and at different places. And some of the principals had, I wanted in the elementary schools to see every 4th and 5th grade, because that's where we have a few more students in the elementary grades than K-3. And in many cases, principals had removed furniture to make sure that distancing was properly taken care of. So they've taken whatever precautions they felt were necessary to keep everybody safe. But not to see any individual violating any of the rules of safety is pretty phenomenal. And while out on that visit, we did discover at one school a few more students in grades 4 and 5 than we thought was comfortable. So Dr. Oates immediately put another teacher in that school to reduce that. And and some of the teachers, in speaking to them, I asked every teacher I talked to, has the school system given you what you need? And in every case, they said, yes, I have everything I need in the classroom. I don't know of anything else I need at this point. And in some cases where 4th and 5th grade, when they had to take that mask off because they were eating lunch in the classroom, I know Dr. Oates and Ms. White particularly have made sure they understood that if that's uncomfortable, take those students to a bigger space so they can spread out more, since they had their mask off to eat lunch. So that has been taken care of in all the elementary schools in case a 4th or 5th grade class is a little bit larger than we think that's comfortable for lunch or breakfast. So I was very impressed with what I saw, and I went to 20 schools for the purpose of checking this. And I know a lot of these folks work, so they don't have time I have to do that kind of thing. But I'm very pleased with what we saw with the students and the staffs. So I wanted to just throw that in because I appreciate what you're saying, and that's what I believe too.
Yeah, I think without these measures, from where we are today, that you would have seen a lot more numbers of those quarantine and positive cases inside the schools. Yeah, so I do believe that that doing the 3 Ws and the disinfection procedures, all that works, and you know, from every indication that I can see, that your staff is doing a good, hard yeoman's job to try to keep up with all that and make it work. So.
Mr. Stanley, Dr. Cohen today said that student and staff transmission of the virus has been extremely rare in North Carolina K-12 schools. Would you agree that's the case also here in Brunswick County?
I would. You know, and rare doesn't mean it doesn't happen.
Absolutely.
It certainly can happen.
But she's speaking from a whole state. I'm talking.
Right.
I'm looking for a snapshot of our county. Would you say that that statement is also accurate for our county?
Yes, absolutely. And again, when we do see the cases that we've seen for the younger kids, it's been more so of a home transmission dynamic than anything occurring inside our facilities.
We spoke of a lot of positive things that are happening. Do you see any negative issues that we need to address, or anything on your mind that you saw that we need to address that we haven't addressed already?
Well, of course, there's things that we would love to do, but it's things that are probably unattainable.
Obviously, the things that we could do.
Right. To give you a prime example, the social distancing piece with the K through 5. When you do have a positive in that K through 5 scenario where you're not able to be that 6 feet, the rule is if you've got folks that's been together with that positive person for longer than 15 minutes, closer than 6 feet, then those folks then have to end up being quarantined. Even though the kids, and the whole reason why they're kind of recommending social distancing at the K through 5 rather than mandating it like they have at the other grades is because the kids don't seem to transmit it as well. And so that's the whole reason for that. But again, from a quarantining standpoint, it really doesn't matter. So you may have a positive, but because folks are closer together, you've got other folks that now have to be quarantined, where if they were further apart, they wouldn't have to. But the challenge is how do you go about doing that when the space is the space, and that's why the state has made the decision on the K through 5, about the social distancing piece and the not really having that in there as a mandate.
Are you seeing transmissions? The newest numbers from the governor is 14 and below. They're seeing very, very few transmissions there. Is that that is the same in our county, correct?
Correct. Okay.
And that was
again. That's not. I mean,
it's not zero. Not zero.
It happens. It happens, but it seems to be the younger age. The kids, say maybe 10 and under, they really just don't seem to have the same transmission mechanism, at least in the same way as the older adults do. They just don't seem to transmit it. They can, and we've seen it, and we've seen it locally. But as a whole scale, we've seen those mainly in situations where the whole household, there was so much virus load in the house, and the entire household has become infected.
Okay.
We have some households, it'll be 4, 5, 6, 7 people or more, in one household that ended up coming positive. And at some point, a lot of times, the kids in the house, they're,
I just wanted to verify because we get a lot of people sending us emails and things about studies they've done in China, where India, that say that children transmit more than adults, and everything I found that's U.S. based, and from what we've done with contact tracing here in the county, I just see that that's not the case.
And that's what I would encourage people to do, because you can find a study on just about anything, anywhere that says anything you want it to say. I would encourage folks to try to get their materials from reliable sources that have been peer reviewed and and had a chance to be vetted, through a lot of different organizations. And that's kind of what I would encourage people to get their information from.
I have one more question. Any anticipation of changes or change would be the good word if we identify any cases of a mutated strain?
Let me get that. Let me hear that one more time.
They're talking about the mutation of
Uh-huh.
the strains been identified in several states. Do we anticipate making any changes if there's cases identified locally?
No, and I tell you how that works. There is a certain percentage of all the sampling that is done that they choose a certain number of those and send on to the CDC and other places to do that sequencing, to that virus. And so, here locally, we don't have that level of review of being able to look at our positives. But I'll tell you, being more contagious, if this virus is, truly more contagious after they do the studies and so on and so forth, if we can still, stick to these 3 W's, it's going to be effective. And that's what is, I don't really view any changes coming to deal with these new strains. But what I hope folks will do is, if they haven't yet, is really let's buckle down on what we've all, kind of been all too familiar with and accustomed to at this point. Let's buckle down on those things with wearing these masks and social distancing where we can, and mixing households. We should add another one about mixing households and spending time with different households, because that's really where the main issues come up. And we particularly need to be real careful of those folks that are in those high-risk groups, people with those medical conditions or over 65-year-old, because they, again, like we went through the statistics, they tend to have a tougher time for those with the COVID disease than others.
Thank you, Mr. Downs.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to ask a question. So you've given us a picture of maybe the 10 and younger and their transmission rates. What would be a picture of 11 to 18? Right.
So I think in the statistics that I have, and they're going to be a little higher, the older that the child is, their ability to transmit and even their ability to maybe get a little sicker themselves increases. I don't know if I've got the breakdown of that number in those ages before me. I just have the 0 to 17 at 11% statewide, and our 0 to 17 is at 10% as far as those that are actually turning positive. But what I can do, and I will send you the link, and everybody can go there tonight, the NCDHHS website. You can go there and actually click on it, and it has all sorts of demographics that break down the ages even more than 0 to 17. And you can actually look at the different ages to see what the percentage positives are. And it breaks down all types of other demographics as well. And you can actually click on it and by county. So you can look at the state averages, and you can also click on it by county. And that would be a good resource. So NCDHHS and COVID, you can just Google that, and it'll take you right there under case demographics.
Okay, so in terms of our school system, though, just Brunswick County schools, the transmission rate within the school from that age group has been, very low? Or
Oh, yeah. I see what you, yes, ma'am. So for that group, because, they are able to socially distance, whenever you do have a positive in that setting, there's typically not as many people in that group that need to be quarantined, unless it's, where they've traveled in a van or something somewhere together. But as long as folks are socially distanced like they are in the school, and the things that you had seen when you visited the schools and everybody was wearing the mask and so on and so forth, we have very few folks in those instances that end up being quarantined. And I think that's a little easier to achieve in the middle school and high schools because not everybody is as close together throughout the week.
So if they're still able to continue to be 6 feet apart, you would still see a low transmission rate?
I think you would see I don't think you would see any more than what we've seen, but hopefully if we can get our percent positivity numbers to continue tracking down and we get past some of these surges that we had through the holidays, hopefully you would see less. Because what happens in our organizations, and this is whether it's a congregate care facility or hospital or whatever you might be dealing with, it is a direct function of the community spread that is occurring, because it doesn't happen inside the buildings. It's happening outside and being brought in. Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Any other questions for Mr. Stanley?
I appreciate your time, Glenn. I really do.
Thank you, Mr. Stanley.
Appreciate what y'all are doing.
Dr. Rhodes, do you have anything to add about what happened today with the governor or the legislature?
Well, there's a lot to add, and I could go now, or we can talk about it during discussion, which would you prefer?
Discussion.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Siemens, we have you down to Spotlight.
One of my favorite slogans, of course, is a positive mind sees positive things. And we're bringing back the student spotlight at the board meetings because we need to talk about some positive things going on in the middle of talking about all the serious stuff that, of course, we need to deal with. But first, we're going to do a little mixture. We'll talk a little bit about some of the grades, talk a little bit about some of the creativity going on in the schools right now, and talk a little bit about specific students shining bright. First, we grabbed a handful of schools to kind of run down the numbers of A honor roll and a B honor roll. We'll give you a handful this board meeting. We'll grab another set of schools for the next board meeting. But let's go with elementary grades 2 through 5. Belleville Elementary right now reporting 77 students on A honor roll, 112 students on a B honor roll. Virginia Williamson Elementary, 48 students on A honor roll, 89 on a B honor roll. At Union Elementary, 69 students on A honor roll, 102 students on a B honor roll. Town Creek Elementary, 103 on A honor roll, 104 students on a B honor roll. And Southport Elementary, 87 students on A honor roll, 105 on a B honor roll. One last peek into the grades at South Brunswick High School, 145 students on A honor roll, 149 students on a B honor roll. And so we'll look at some of the middle schools next time. But I think it goes to show that there is a lot of success going on inside the schools, as challenging as everything is. And speaking of challenging, you got to rise up to it. You got to embrace the new, as Dr. Oates brought to us at the beginning of the school year. So that said, let me give you a couple examples of some of the creativity going on for the folks who may not embrace the social media like say someone like me does. We do share a lot of positive things going on in the district on our social media pages. Like this, just last week, this is Southport Elementary School, and in this class, the Dolphins were studying how Amazon, that giant business, started and grew and how they've become successful. And then they took it a step farther, and the people you see on the screens there's a couple remote learners, but most of them are actually admin and management from Amazon Corp. So those students got to ask questions straight up in a virtual field trip to take their assignment to the next level. And I thought that was something fascinating. And, you can't bring them inside the school, but gosh, for kids of that age to be talking to the big dogs, that's pretty impressive. Town Creek Middle School right here, this is our our media specialist, and she has, she's found a way to keep the kids engaged in books. What does she do? She creates a spreadsheet. The students tell her what books they want. She takes them in the library, loads them up on the cart, puts that cart on the road, so to speak, down the hallways, and then brings them to the classrooms for the kids to check out. So it's one more way to just get there and make sure that just because it's a little different inside the schools, they don't miss out on anything and they stay engaged. This is a screenshot of the YouTube page for North Brunswick High School athletics. All three high schools, traditional high schools, have a YouTube page. The reason I bring this up is because obviously with sports, there are limitations on spectators. So the schools have found ways to make sure everybody in the community can check out the games that are indoors. The middle schools have been doing Facebook Live for the indoor sporting events, so that everybody can take part if they're not allowed inside. And then the high schools are doing on the YouTube channel. So if anybody wants to take part in that, either check out the middle schools on Facebook on the Facebook pages, or follow the high schools' YouTube channels, because it's pretty high-tech stuff they're using too. Now, to wrap this up, CCP, Career and College Promise Program, it is a fantastic partnership with our community college, and they spotlight students that are shining bright once a month, so we want to pass that along too. This is Trevor Costin, North Brunswick High School's a Scorpion there. And his CCP pathway, welding technology, and HVAC. He is the February CCP student of the month. And then we've got Cassidy Giles at South Brunswick High School, CCP pathway, pharmacy technician program, and college transfer pathway. Amazing program the CCP is. And then finally, Annabelle Griffin, a.k.a. Gracie, over at the Trojans, West Brunswick High School. She's the February CCP student of the month. CCP pathway, college transfer. Great program where they get to take college courses for free at the community college while they're still in high school. And just to wrap it up, I want to go back to all of this positive stuff we're talking about is people embracing the new, something that Dr. Oates challenged everybody with at the beginning of the year.
And we hear a great deal of the difficulties that this year has brought us, particularly with instruction and delivering instruction. And we all know that many students face hardships with virtual learning and the remote learning situation. However, we don't want to slight these students who are excelling. And as Daniel has pointed out tonight, with the number of students from the select schools that we have tonight that are on A, B, and A honor roll, and not to mention the other students that have been highlighted here tonight, their will to succeed far surpasses any obstacle that has been put in their place. So I definitely want to applaud all of these students who are doing so well in the midst of this pandemic, their teachers and their parents for continuing to support them. So again, thank you, Daniel, for bringing that up.
What the media specialist was doing, I happened to be at that school and saw her in action the other day. That school does not, the students don't change class. So, and the teachers change class. So since the students don't go to the media center, she was bringing the media center to them. So the class would tell her generally what they needed and all that, and she and her student helper there would bring it to them. So trying to keep things as normal as possible. So we thought that was a good idea.
I also just want to say for the folks that are viewing, great job to those that's doing the AV honor roll. But I just want to say those who haven't made that achievement level, keep trying. I wasn't an AV or A honor roll student myself, but under these circumstances, the mere fact that they're still there trying says a lot.
Thank you, sir. Okay, next we have our teacher of the year, Ms. Bryan.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My husband's family is from Pennsylvania, and if you've paid attention to the news the last couple days, you know they've gotten pounded up there with snow. And despite all that snow, somehow the groundhog was able to climb his way out of all that snow. And as predicted, he saw his shadow. And so 6 more weeks of winter it is. And although we face 6 more weeks of winter, high school seniors and their families, Ms. Moffitt, as you well know, are beginning to turn their attention toward excitement and anticipation of the traditional rites of passage of a senior year. Once again, though, we face kind of some uncertainty of what events like prom and graduation may be able to look like. But I can attest to this. There are conversations happening right now about creating special events for this year's senior class at our high schools. So tonight's Teacher's Voice episode focuses on one teacher doing just that. It's my pleasure to spotlight Ms. Courtney Gore from West Brunswick High School, social studies teacher. You're going to hear about her efforts with the West Brunswick High School SGA to make their senior year special for all those Trojans, and find out also what she's doing to build relationships with her students inside the classroom.
The students have been really vocal about wanting senior year to be special, right? So they have like a sort of shortened junior year at school. So they've really wanted to find ways where the seniors could have a special event. So like we're doing How Sweet It Is to Be a Senior right before Valentine's Day, where they can come through and all the teachers will all be there, and like the clubs will have signs and stuff, and they drive through with their decorated senior cars and just get some sweet treats from us. And then advocating for things like how can we make prom happen in the times of COVID. So I've been working to advocate for them and trying to get a prom-like event happening. So it's been challenging. So my focus in the classroom, it helps with classroom management too, but it has always been on relationships. And it's been more challenging this year to try to get to know kids, you know, just through the computer, especially those first few weeks. So every Monday I try to like talk about our weekends, and I'm really pretty open and I like to share. Like they all know this weekend I got my wedding dress. So I try to like, you know, promote as much as possible. I'm sharing so they can share. Every time the kid enters a Zoom, I greet them by name, just like I would at the door. And I try to like comment like, oh, I like how you have your colored lights on, or I like your hair today, or, you know, just something when they come in so they know like I'm recognizing that you're coming to class. You're not just another little box. I also use this activity at the beginning of the semester where they have to take this online personality like strength inventory. So it only gives them strengths of their personality. I used to just use it in my psychology class, but I thought, why not use it in American too? And so they were tasked to like strengthen their strength over a week. And some of their responses about like, you know, these are the ways that I demonstrated kindness this week, and it makes them feel good too, and increases their self-awareness and boosts their self-image, because there's been a big increase in anxiety and like feeling lonely for them this year. They don't get to see their friends. For some of them, like the acceptance they feel at school with their peers is not there because they're not at school. So I've tried to boost their self-confidence and like be really understanding, like have weekly meetings on Wednesdays with kids who are struggling. I always meet with at least 2, just for those like 10-minute conversations you would normally have outside your door or like to the side in your classroom that you don't get to have. So it's been really isolating for kids. So I try to reach out as much as I can. So just like little ways of trying to get to know them and their personality and keep establishing those relationships.
Well, I just want to say thank you to Mr. Lemon. You shared earlier that you had the opportunity to go into all of our schools, and I know that teachers really appreciate seeing you there and being there. And Mr. Barger and Mr. Benton, I really appreciate you joining us at our January TAC meeting, and look forward to continuing a good, positive relationship with our board and our TAC. Thank you all.
Thank you. Okay, we need to approve the meeting agenda. Are there any corrections to the agenda?
Make a motion to approve with the addition of approving the personnel list as number 5.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the agenda with the addition of the personnel list number 5 under action. Mr. Berger has seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So the agenda is approved. Board members, you have the minutes from the January 5th regular meeting, the January 19th operations, and the January 19th finance and HR committee meetings. Is there any corrections to those minutes?
Motion to approve.
No corrections. A motion to approve by Mr. Berger.
Second.
We have a second by Mr. Benton. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
The minutes are approved. Under action items, we have the designation of the representative for the Board of Education for the Substance Use and Addiction Committee. We received 6 resumes of interest, people who are interested in this position, and you've had a chance to review those. Do we have a motion for any of those candidates?
Mr. Lemon, Mr. Chairman, my apologies. I'd like to nominate Ms. Jennifer Lucas, RN, who is the school nurse at Southport Elementary School. She's very active in the community, very engaged with not only her students and the staff of her school, but with others in the community as well. I think she'd make a great addition to that.
And I would second that. And part of the reason when that came out, I wanted that to be offered to someone on staff in the school system. And I think that would be a good addition to that committee.
Any other nominations? We have a motion to approve Ms. Lucas for that position, and a second by Mr. Robinson. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So Ms. Lucas, Ms. Torrey, if you will notify her that she, and we appreciate her willingness to serve on that committee. That's a very important one, and she, looking at her resume, she's certainly qualified. So we have a resolution tonight that we want to read to the audience and perhaps approve. It's a resolution for the governor. And let me read what we have. Whereas it is the responsibility of Brunswick County Board of Education to advocate for the health and well-being of the staff and students they are elected to serve. Whereas on March 11, 2020, the World Health Organization declared coronavirus disease 2019, or COVID-19, a global pandemic. Whereas COVID-19 vaccinations have begun in Brunswick County and are currently being administered to Group 2, adults 65 or older, whereas Brunswick County has a large population of residents that are 65 or older, whereas Brunswick County Board of Education considers district and school administrators, educators, support staff to be frontline workers in a sector essential to the functioning of society and at substantially high risk for exposure to COVID-19, whereas the Board of Education desires to ensure the safety of all Brunswick County employees through the administration of the COVID-19 vaccine as they continue to perform their essential duties. Now, therefore, be it resolved that Governor Roy Cooper is requested to modify Group 2 to include public school employees listed therein. Do we have any discussion about that resolution?
Mr. Benton and I initially had this discussion, and we brought it up at our committee meeting. It also came up in the TAC meeting we had attended. Our concern and our dedication to keeping our employees safe, all of our school employees. There's nobody sitting up here that doesn't agree that we need to do everything we can. And I implored the board to reach out to every contact they had, whether it's in Brunswick County, whether it's in Raleigh, I don't care if it's in Idaho, whoever you can, to help push this vaccination to our employees. And this is one more step we can take to put the pressure on the folks in Raleigh and on the governor to include our school staff and the frontline workers, just as our firefighters and our police officers and everybody else who got it in the first phase. Our school staff is vitally important to the health, safety, education, and well-being of our community.
Any other comments? You're right. And I just read today where the state of California has their teachers in this group. So I don't see why the governor hadn't already done that, but
Florida did as well. Florida was the first, and I know some counties had excess vaccines and were able, like Davie County, to vaccinate all their employees as well. But this seems to be a supply issue, and I can't understand. We want to be open, and these essential workers were begging us in the beginning of the pandemic when we were virtually that they needed schools open so they could go to work, but yet we're not prioritized on this, and I just don't think that's right for our staff because they're still put in harm's way.
so with those comments in mind and having read the resolution, I'd like to have a motion to approve.
Motion.
Okay, we have a motion from Mr. Barber, seconded by Mr. Robinson. All in favor, say aye. Aye. So the resolution has passed, and we need to get it to the governor.
This one I have to add on to the agenda at such point.
Next item is Town Creek Elementary and Cedar Grove roofs. Ms. Rutledge.
Good luck, Nick.
Board members, the first item is Town Creek Elementary and Cedar Grove Middle School roof replacement. The background is the roofs on both of these schools need replacement. There was considerable damage inside both schools in Hurricane Florence. The roofs have been they've been repaired, but the repair is not of a permanent nature, and the roofs need to be replaced. There's funding available for the roof replacement from insurance through DPI, and we're now ready to replace those roofs. That said, a request for qualifications was posted for qualified firms for design and construction administration for the project. Proposals were received from 4 firms: Terracon Consultants, Sutton Kennerly Associates Consulting Engineers, REI Engineers, that's Roof Engineering Incorporated, and Raymond Engineering. A selection of committee of staff rated REI Engineers as providing the strongest combination of the 4 criteria outlined, and we recommend awarding an engineering contract to REI.
And this is for both schools, correct?
Yes, sir.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion by Mr. Barber to approve replacing these roofs by which eye?
REI.
Yeah. We have a second by Ms. Moffitt. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
Put on some new roofs.
Yes. The next is, this regards an HVAC improvement project at Leland Middle. As part of HVAC improvements funded by the system's 2018 Guaranteed Energy Savings Contract, approximately 50% of Leland Middle School received new mechanical equipment. At that time, staff felt completion of the entire school might make meeting savings goals too risky. So therefore, we didn't undertake complete replacement at the school at that time. That guaranteed energy savings project as a whole is achieving and exceeding required savings. That aside, the system has funding to complete the HVAC system replacement at the rest of the school. This work will provide additional energy savings and improve classroom additions. It's needed at the school. It is important that the recently installed system and the associated digital controls that go along with that system work seamlessly with any newly installed equipment. This integration presents some additional challenges over a normal mechanical project, and the volume of work to be done during school summer break is challenging, and this work will have to be done during the summer break. So staff has determined that the best method for obtaining the best project design and construction deliverables is by using a state-approved design-build method. State statutes encourage the board to approve the criteria that defines when this method of project delivery is appropriate, and it requires that the board review and approve that the project in question meets that criteria. Therefore, the board must approve the written criteria for determining when design-build method is appropriate for a project, and they must address the following 6 factors. Number 1, the unit's ability to adequately and thoroughly define the project requirements in the RFP. Number 2, time constraints for project delivery. 3, the unit's ability to ensure that the quality project can be delivered. 4, the availability of qualified staff or outside consultants experienced in design build to manage and oversee the project. 5, good faith efforts to comply with historically underutilized business participation. And 6, the criteria used by staff, including a cost-benefit analysis of using design-build in lieu of traditional construction bidding methods. The board then must consider the organization's ability to administer the project based on these 6 criteria. And I'm going to address those 6 criteria now. Number 1, the operation division. We do have professional personnel that are both qualified and experienced to thoroughly define the project requirements, and professional purchasing, finance, and legal personnel are on staff to assist in the review and development of the RFQ. Number 2, funding is available through the bond program for the completion of the HVAC systems at Leland Middle. Work needs to occur during the summer break to maintain acceptable classroom additions. Using design-build process provides the best measure to ensure that the product is available when needed, and as the design-build team, which includes our staff, along with engineering professionals, controls design and product selection. That's an important note there. Additionally, using a single provider for design, permitting, and installation streamlines any questions that may arise during permit process, as the designer and the contractor are one and the same. The operations division has experienced personnel that are knowledgeable in managing a project using design build. We use this for the artificial turf projects at the high schools, which was also constructed under a compressed deadline, and it worked well. And excuse me, I'm on number 5 now. Number 5, the board policy for inclusion of hub will be shared in the RFQ, and responders will be expected to comply with board policy and state policy. This will be an equal part of the evaluated selection criteria. And number 6, the budget for the project is $1.1 million. Using design build gives the school system more control over system design and product selection. We want what we already have in that school. We want the new equipment to be the same. Easier maintained, a better controlled system as a whole. You've got a digital control system talking to the same pieces of equipment throughout the school.
Sue, this wasn't a regular piece of equipment. This was like that variable Freon deal, right? Like we were testing it when we put.
Variable refrigerant.
Yeah, they put it in, and that's why they did a half of the building was to test it to make sure it was reliable before we did the other half, correct?
Yes, and it's really energy efficient, and it has worked really well. Okay. That's a pretty new type of equipment.
Yeah.
As I said the other day, it's not on the bleeding edge, but it's on the leading edge. And the equipment that we have there, it's been easy to control. It's doing a great job controlling humidity in that part of the building. It's good equipment. Standardizing controls and equipment reduces maintenance costs and increases system performance. And doing the job now and getting it done in the summer, we may eliminate some escalation costs, which we hope we will experience when the economy comes back in the country. So the action requested is approve this project, meets the criteria required by the state for using design build, and authorize staff to move forward with the use of the design build delivery method.
Are there any questions for Ms. Rutledge? Okay. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
Mr. Benton makes a motion to approve putting in this unit, these units, and Mr. Barger seconds. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Any opposed? That motion is carried. Under discussion and announcements, Dr. Oates. Oh, number 5, I'm sorry. I have a motion to approve the personnel list.
Motion.
Second.
We have a motion to approve personnel. Mr. Robinson, Mr. Barger seconds. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. So the personnel list is approved. Dr. Oates.
All right, for discussion, just would ask that, it's just to start with, for the board to keep Freya Cahill and her family in your prayers. Freya just recently lost her father on this past Saturday, so that's one of the reasons she's not here tonight. So I just ask that you keep Freya and the family in prayer. Yesterday, February 1st, started the Observance of Black History Month, and we are looking forward to lessons and exhibits highlighting extraordinary African Americans in our school system. February is also Career and Technical Education Month, and we're doing several things in that area to highlight this. Mr. Cheers will, if you want to elaborate on some of the things that are taking place during CTE Month.
Thank you, Dr. Oates. As Dr. Oates mentioned, February is CTE month that's celebrated across the nation. And CTE prepares students to succeed academically in careers in both established and emerging fields. It empowers students to be successful individuals, workers, and leaders in our global economy. It provides hands-on education for students in areas like agriculture, business, career development, family consumer science, finance, health science, information technology, marketing, entrepreneurship, technology, engineering, design, trade, and industry. And it also provides students the opportunity to demonstrate leadership in career and technical student organizations such as DECA, FBLA, FFA, HOSA, Skills USA, and TSA. So I would like to thank Dr. Oates and the board for your support of career and technical education in Brunswick County We have a premier program across the state, so thank you for that. And to celebrate it, we are having a contest for our CTE teachers to develop a public service announcement. We left it kind of wide open what they could do. They're develop a up to 3-minute video. They will be judged by our Business Advisory Council when they meet at the end of this month, and then they will be available on the schools and linked to the CTE website. So a lot of good things going on in CTE, so we really do appreciate your support.
I saw your Facebook post in relation to the coast and its offerings, and you were getting a lot of nice comments.
Thank you.
Mr. Houston, if it's not appropriate, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to add one thing here. You and I visited the coast quite a few times. Mr. Horn is very passionate about what he does there. And one of the things I found most intriguing was not just the CTE services provided there, but the 9th grade academy and how students go to the 9th grade academy because they may be at risk of dropout or not being as successful in specific areas. And Mr. Horn outlined to us that he has students come into the 9th grade academy who may not be proficient at math, struggling in the 8th and 9th grade math, and they get into the coast. And I visited some of these classes like green energy, the aerospace, and these students are doing math that a lot of us couldn't do or couldn't dream of doing. And I think it speaks not only to the success of the CTE program, but the success of the 9th grade academy that's also in that building, that these students who are at risk of possibly failing math are now doing math at an extraordinary level, higher than they ever could have dreamed of. And I don't want that to get overshadowed, but CTE is important, but the fact that these kids are able to get plugged into our CTE program and that we've equipped them to be that much more successful.
Thank you for recognizing that. It's because we show them the relevance of the math before we actually teach them the concepts of the math. So thank you.
Darryl, I have one. You have an event coming up here. I guess this is our last board meeting before your big event on the 23rd.
Yes, the Facebook Live, February 23rd, we will be broadcasting live from the coast. That will be a Facebook Live event to reach our public, our families, our parents, our students before registration. Daniel is going to link it. It will be basically housed, and if I say this wrong, Daniel, jump in, housed on the Coast Facebook page, but it will be broadcast through all of our high school and middle schools' Facebook pages. It will be a live event. We'll have someone monitoring chat where parents can send a question in that we would answer in real time, or they could send in questions and we would get back to them as well. So we're very excited about that coming up on February 23rd.
6 o'clock, right?
6 o'clock.
6 o'clock.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Announcements. This week also is National School Counselors Week. I'd just like to take an opportunity to applaud all of our counselors who continue to serve our students in numerous ways during this time of COVID, during the pandemic. And I also had the opportunity to share with our commissioners this afternoon the capital bond projects that are going on. Simply did a presentation bringing them up to speed as to what capital projects are actually in progress today, going on now. They appear to be very amazed of the progress that we were taking in making sure that the bond dollars are being spent as had been dictated by the citizens of Brunswick County. So I enjoyed giving that presentation to them, showing them real-time, well, not real-time, but recent pictures of the construction that's taking place. As you know, today at 2 o'clock, the governor, along with State Board of Education Chair Eric Davis and our State Superintendent Catherine Truitt, held a press conference and called on schools across the state to reopen to in-person instruction to all students. One of the things that the governor said from the outset was that across the state, out of 115 school districts, there are 90 school districts that are offering in-person learning, or at least some form of in-person learning. However, there are 25 districts across the state that have been on Plan C, or virtual learning, since August. So with this joint push to reopen schools for all students, Brunswick County once again has been ahead of the curve. We were the first, I believe, in the region to have our students come back, our elementary students come back on October 5th when we were allowed to do so. We, from the outset, have offered Plan B all year long. So there has been some form of face-to-face learning taking place since school started. Has it been optimal? Has it been what everyone has wanted? Of course it has not, but it has, with Plan B, going with the guidelines that we have, we've been able to do that. Some of the guidance that goes along with this push to reopen does not change, does not differ from the guidance that we've already been using, particularly as it pertains to the toolkit. When the superintendents got wind of this coming, which was about time we were in cabinet, about 12:30 today, along with that notification, there also came the additions or the edits to the current toolkit as well. There really aren't too many changes, but just to read one of the things that go along with this, out of page 3 on the newly revised toolkit, grades 6 through 12 should return to in-person instruction 5 days per week to the fullest extent possible, while following all protocols in the North Carolina toolkit, including the 6 feet social distancing requirements that are detailed on page 6 of the toolkit. So basically what that means is if we were going to reopen our middle and high schools on a Plan A, we would have to be able to maintain 6-foot distancing at all times. Can we do that across the board? Some schools may be able to do that. All schools may not. Ms. Moffitt and I were having a conversation earlier today. I can tell you right offhand, thinking now with South Brunswick being being the smallest high school and then having students on Plan B, it is possible, it is probable that if the board decided to go in that direction, that we could open South Brunswick High School and possibly maintain 6-foot distancing throughout the day. Would that be the case at North Brunswick? More than likely not, if we were to do that, because of course North Brunswick is a very larger than South Brunswick High School. Something also that was not mentioned in the governor's remarks today, but has been out since last night, at least that's when I got it, and that is the possibility of a new law being passed that is now in the Senate, Senate Bill 37. And what Senate Bill 37 is speaking of, and I have a copy of that here as well, and it's basically asking, or mandating, I should say, that schools reopen, but two of the caveats here, it says local boards of education shall provide the option of in-person instruction under Plan A to all students enrolled in that school with an IEP, with an individual education plan, as defined by the general statute. Local boards of education shall provide the option of remote education for these students to elect to participate in at the discretion of the student's parent or guardian for the remainder of the 2021 school year. So that's one piece dealing with students who have IEPs. The second part of this, local boards of education shall provide the option of in-person instruction under Plan A or Plan B for all other students enrolled in grades kindergarten through 12th grade in that school unit. It shall be the discretion of the local board whether in-person instruction shall be provided under Plan A, Plan B, or both plans as necessary to address the needs of different school settings. Local boards of education shall continue to provide remote instruction options for students to elect to participate in at the discretion of the parent or guardian for the remainder of the 2021 school year. So regardless of what conclusion the board comes to as what plan you want to have us put in place, there has to be a remote option according to this proposed legislation. And let me just say, this is proposed legislation. It is not yet law. However, the likelihood of it becoming law is strong. It does say that this would take effect the first weekday 15 days after it is made into law. So that would give us time, if the board decided to make a change, to get some implementation in place. So those are some of the major pieces of this. As I said, this just came out. I got a copy of the proposal from Senate Bill 37 last night, about 9:30. And of course, the governor's comments today at 2 o'clock. So there's a lot for me and my staff to digest, to be able to bring back to you recommendations going forward. And I would definitely encourage each of you to delve into not only the proposed legislation of Senate Bill 37, but all of the changes that have taken place out of the toolkit that was sent out today. And I'll be glad to send you a copy of both of those, a link to those tonight.
Jerry, this is something I think Mr. Lemon and I were on the board. What we looked at in October is trying to bring back IEP students, and it wasn't feasible at that time. You're going to continue to, I guess, to study and see if we can make some more room in the buildings, or see what we need to do to accomplish that?
That is correct. We started that process today. So we're looking at the number of students with IEPs and what the feasibility is of that, to be able to ensure social distancing if that were to take place.
I have a few comments that I want to make. As you said, we just found this out today, so there's a lot to digest with that. So the toolkit was updated today as well, and I've looked at that online. So I would like to propose that we find out the current number of kids at each school who are face-to-face versus remote, and how many kids who are face-to-face would choose to go remote if we were to say, with the 6-foot distancing, we could put schools back into place. As you said, South Brunswick High School could be a school that could probably open up, but I would like to find that information out from each school throughout the county. I know that a lot of parents, or even some people in the community, would question, why would you open up some schools and keep others closed? Well, on the flip side, we closed Jessie May Monroe and Union because of their specific situation of having a cluster. Well, we didn't close the whole county, so we didn't make it a blanket rule. And I just don't think that we can make it a blanket rule to keep all schools closed when some could be open. Because I feel like we need to open the schools that can safely be opened and that can follow the guidelines. That may not apply to all schools, but I would like to push for that. I think that's very important. I believe that we're losing many of our kids academically, mentally, socially. They're falling through the cracks. And today, Mandy Cohen did state the only difference between Plan A and B is really about maintaining social distance. That does not mean that schools that can open shouldn't be open. And that was exactly what she said. When I asked Dr. Stanley tonight, would the tracking continue to go down or at least stay the same? He said yes, for kids who could stay 6 feet apart that are older kids in the schools. So I think we should rise to the challenge and go ahead and make a plan to open these schools that can be open and not wait any further to get these schools open. I don't know how you guys feel, but I think if we can get them open, we need to be opening the schools for the kids who can go in, if the numbers are there. I don't know if that's Charlotte Middle. I don't know which counties in the school could be open, but I say we should definitely start making a plan to do that.
I would like to hear the numbers, as she mentioned, but at the same time, if we elect to move in that direction, we need to know what additional challenges that's going to place on staff, and what additional measures we as a board may need to take to accommodate those additional needs, whether it be equipment. We're probably okay with PPE, but I know there has to be additional needs should we move in that direction. I just don't want to overburden staff, make a decision abruptly, overburden the staff. That's my concern, is the teachers and the staff that will have to deal with this. So in view of that, just make sure we do our due diligence up front and we don't have to be worried that we haven't taken the appropriate measures to protect everyone.
I'd just like us to take a look at this. I mean, DPI I think just did another update where they just talked while we've been here, just saying that now they might waiver the 6-foot rule. So I think we need to just put this on our committee agenda maybe and take a review again. Yeah, Dr. Oaks is shaking his head. You got the same thing I just got?
I was shaking my head. I was just turning to Ms. White because that's what I predicted in cabinet today, that there may be a change in the social distancing. And
Yeah.
you just said it. I just kind of chuckled and looked at her because I said that today.
Ms. Truitt's chief just texted me that there, hold fast, there's going to be some adjustments. I was just looking at the latest update on my phone here as we were discussing this, and this information is very new, it's fluid. I don't think we're equipped tonight to even have a hard discussion on where we go, because just 2 hours before this meeting is when the information first came out. I think this board has made strides, has shown its commitment to getting our students back in school in a safe manner. And I think we continue down that same road and we evaluate it the same way we have been. But I'm right now not equipped to make a decision on where we go until I have time to study the information. And we allow the roller coaster to kind of slow down here, because we have conflicting reports from the same people. We have differing reports from different state agencies. We need to get a collective message here before we go forward with what we're going to do. So I'm fine with discussing it at committee if we even have the facts then.
Well, to your point, I would like to sort of start having a plan being put in place to, in the event that happens. I don't want to wait until it happens and then make
Well,
a plan.
let's don't forget that this man's been hired to do that.
Right.
And I don't plan to voice an opinion until you come back to us and say this is possible and this is what you recommend. So, because I am concerned that when you put 1,500 kids in West Brunswick and they're changing classes, you better not have a social distancing rule, because it's not going to happen. So let's just play it. Let's don't get too fast on it. So.
You want to add to stuff?
Yes, in the discussion, I had mentioned it to Mr. Lemon, and he gave some input on this. Our redistricting committee, I know this is going to be a continual process for some time, and I had mentioned the fact to appoint at least 2 citizens to sit on that committee as well. I just wanted to get the feedback of the board, so we can have some additional transparency and input by our citizens. Local knowledge, I think, is important to have on this. I know we go by what, of course, the consultants are saying, but I would like to see, at least a couple of citizens on this committee. I know Mr. Lemon was concerned to make sure we get people who are, non-biased per se. But, it would give that committee and us some additional security, knowing that we've had some local input and citizen input on this whole event that's been going on. I know there's been some criticism from the outset from the community, and there's been good and bad, but should help with the criticism. At least we, have some citizen input that can help some of the decisions that may get made as we proceed with this redistricting process.
Anybody else got a comment about that?
I'm not equipped to put anybody up for those positions tonight.
We have 30 days. We've been working on this thing for 2.5 years or more now, so we have 1 month left until the decision will be brought to the board. So I don't know, at this point, the maps are released to the public. They're
Okay. I wasn't aware of that. I was under the impression we had some additional time on that.
Yeah, I mean, since we took our oath, we were talking about a March timeframe and this tying up. And we're only 30 days away from it essentially at this point. I feel like this process for phase 2 has been more transparent and has had more input than the first phase did. You know, we can put surveys out there, we can hold public, the workshops like we did earlier this evening. There was 2 people who attended tonight, correct? Yeah. We've all gotten emails on it. I read and respond to every email. And I've talked to folks on the phone about it. I feel like there has been community input as much as the community wants input in it. If we were at the beginning of this process, Mr. Robinson, I think I'd be okay with it. And you and I have talked about this, and I told you I value the voice of our community. But right now, I feel like this is signing a pitcher in the 9th inning of a game, and it's almost over.
And I would withdraw that comment. I was under the impression we had some more time with that, but I respectfully disagree with your statement.
Okay.
Well, clarify your thoughts on that. What was it you said that Mr. Lemon said?
Oh, it was back.
And sure, if we did.
When he emailed us, Mr. Robinson emailed us, and I made a comment that it was difficult in redistricting to find somebody who didn't have a biased opinion because
I agree with that.
This touches you very dramatically when you start moving kids around.
Right.
So it's hard to find anybody, let's say in the Leland area, when they're going to be affected, somebody is, without almost a biased opinion, but.
I apologize, I wasn't up to speed, and this was going to end as quickly as it was. I still been reading all this, but, you know, from the get-go, that should have been considered. So I'll leave it at that.
And I'll agree with you, it should have been considered from the beginning. I just don't think right now, we have the ability to put out advertising.
I don't disagree with that in light of that additional information.
And I will say this, Mr. Benton and I have spoken with Mr. Cropper, and I know he's held community meetings, and he has made modifications to the maps based on the feedback that Mr. Benton and I have collected from the folks on this board, and the feedback we got from the community. And those maps have been changed. We've had hard discussions about it. They're uncomfortable discussions for me, Mr. Cropper, I'm sure Mr. Benton. Sue, you were in there with us. But we have taken the voice of the community, I think, to the meetings that we've had. It's only been one. But we've done the best we can, I think, to bring those concerns to Mr. Cropper and get those maps modified the best we can right now. I still haven't seen, we don't know what he's going to give us in March. So we'll have to go from there.
And it'll be interesting to vote with us in the best interest of the county.
I believe Daniel has a list of all of his comments that have been submitted to Mr. Cropper, and I believe he had a couple hundred comments, questions, opinions expressed to him, and they are posted on the website, Daniel?
The survey results, the results from the first survey are posted. We put out another survey today. When that one expires, we'll post those results as well.
Okay.
Good.
Did you say you got about 75 in the first survey?
Yeah, I can't remember how many. I know the consultants had said a majority of them were around, I believe, the Mallory Creek area. But I believe 75, that does sound about right.
Do you have any more, Dr. I think that completes the agenda, so.
Motion to
Have a
adjourn.
motion to adjourn. Who made the motion? Mr. Benton. Mr. Benton made the motion, Mr. Robinson second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. So moved.